Hey, what's going on guys, Khraze here, welcome back to another Outriders video. Let's talk about the future of this game and the future of your account. Recently we had a Q&A session with the developer team. Of course, only content creators had access to that, but I do have all of the details right here for you guys, the tidbits and everything in the form of a transcript, so I can share these infos with you guys. Now, of course, this goes over a ton of topics from cheating and hacking all the way up to endgame content, post-launch content, DLCs, farming, and all that kind of cool stuff. So let's jump right into it. And as always, if you enjoyed this at any point, also don't forget to leave a thumbs up on it. Anyway, let's begin with the subject of cheating, as this is one of the main priorities right now for the developers, among other things. And there are going to be some big plans for when the game comes around and it launches. Now, do keep in mind that if you did farm things the legit kind of way and did not use any third-party tools to artificially increase drop chances, for example, then you have nothing to worry about. Even if you did the chest runs back before they were nerfed, you're not going to be affected by any of this. This specifically only affects people who used hacking tools and other similar means. So at the same time, the developers mentioned that they don't want to make any harsh decisions that impact non-cheaters, but they do want to punish the cheaters who do carry this attitude, especially into multiplayer. So some of these proposed solutions were to just restrict the way these cheaters would get access to the multiplayer, like for example only being grouped with other cheaters and being put in a different kind of matchmaking pool, or at the same time being completely restricted from the multiplayer altogether, though again it's still in the works and the team is still brainstorming it. Now, one question that might arise is what happens to the demo accounts who did use these third-party tools to maybe get another item on top or maybe make the farming a little bit easier. Well, it's very unlikely that these people will get banned, simply because it's free and anybody can create multiple demo accounts and cheat again. So according to the developers' own words, it would feel a little bit pointless to take action against these people. What they will take action against is people who have the full game. So if you do the same thing in the full game or carry over your cheated items in the full game, you're probably gonna see some bans and you're probably gonna see some restricted access. And this is where I'm gonna leave it at. Maybe just head over into the full game with a clear account, or at least delete anything that you use in order to cheat in the demo so far. Now, on the same note, let's talk about the meta, the end game. This was a big topic in the demo. Even in the demo, people were like content enough to just refarm the same NPC or the same boss enemy like a million times a day. So this is gonna probably be a little bit different in the end game, as there's gonna be a lot of world tiers, and according to the developers, these will continue upwards, and they would expect to see the repeated speed run kills of NPCs like Gauss to reduce, and they don't imagine that behavior will stick in that way all the way in the full game, since there's gonna be other ways to actually approach farming by then. We will talk about that in just a little bit, but when it comes to the meta, like the awesome combinations of items and classes that we saw in the demo, that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of what's actually possible in the end game with the rest of the mods that are still undiscovered in the demo, and especially so when it comes to crafting. So the real meta will come in the full game. And there was a pretty interesting example that we got with the Pyromancer, which in the demo is regarded as being one of the weakest classes, if not the weakest, especially at the very beginning, but the developers have mentioned in the Q&A that it's actually one of the strongest classes in the end game, especially when it comes to certain builds, abilities, and mod combinations. So the reason it feels so weak in the early stages is because they actually had to balance it out so that it doesn't feel too powerful compared to the others in the end game, and there were other instances of these in there too. So if you're a Pyromancer, just hang in there, because you're likely going to have a ton of fun with this class once you reach that end game. In the end, what you need to know about the meta right now is that there's not going to be any balancing or any nerfs or any changes just based purely on what's been happening in the demo. This is only going to happen once the game launches, after a lot more people are playing, and after the developers get a lot more data to properly assess the situation and see if there's any balancing needed. This is not going to be done solely on the fact of what we saw in the demo, and I think that's another great thing. Nonetheless, we talked about those mods, but it's not going to be the only way in which you're going to make your character super strong. Theory crafting is going going to be a big part of the game, and there's been quite a lengthy talk about that subject. There's lots of new things to experience in the full game, even beyond the guns, and developers were super excited about the theory crafting that people will be able to do when they get bigger mods, better mods, get higher levels and so on. So they decided to only show some of the legendaries in the demo, and there's gonna be many more in the game, as well as armor sets of legendary quality that are going to completely change everything we know from the free demo. They will expect that when crafting becomes available, then a lot of new options will become legitimate, and there are plenty of items that might not be perfect when you get them as a drop, but after crafting they can become extremely powerful, according to the quote right here. Now, since we liked replayability so much in the demo, as in repeating the same content, getting ready for the end game, and that solo play, yeah, People Can Fly assured us that these are the core principles of the game right now and of the genre, and they're a huge emphasis in Outriders as well. So players, of course, we do know that, have the possibility to repeat the campaign and the expeditions, as we can do already in the demo, but progress through the game is going to be down to your personal choice, how well you understand the game, and the strength of your build. So the very end of the game is going to be that Eye of the Storm. It's going to be really challenging if you're a solo player, but if your build is good enough and if you perfect it, it is still going to be possible for you to, well, accomplish progression in that as well. That's why the developers have initially said that they don't see the same types of farming methods from the demo to also carry over in the full game, simply because there's way better choices out there once you reach the end game. Now, the next bit is going to be all about API tools, extra content, and future DLCs, and there's definitely a few of these in the plans, especially if the game will fare well when it comes to sales. So this is like one of the major points of discussion right now. If people want to stay with the game, then they can begin looking into things that will make the player's life easier. They are super focused, when talking about the developers, on listening to the game's community and building what they need. So for example, stuff like, for example, the creation of extra content and DLCs will depend on the reception of the game and if there's a large enough player base that wants it. And of course, from the numbers in the free demo right now, it all seems to be very promising, but only time will tell, according to the notes. So here's hoping that the game fares well in sales, because there is quite a bit of potential right there. Now, from this point on, I do want to cover a few quick fire questions. Like, there's some really big questions in the community that have been asked, like for example the auto skip cutscene toggle. It was a major point that was talked about. This is a low priority right now, and you're likely not going to see anything in regards to it, but there are some unskippable cutscenes in the game, as there's going to be stuff loading or streaming in the background. So keep in mind that even if they do implement something like this, not all of the cutscenes will be skippable once the game launches. On the same subject of cutscenes, with the frame rate issues, they have high hopes that the cutscenes and their FPS issues will be fixed for launch, but they can't make any strong guarantees at the moment. They're trying their best to address it, and yeah, there were talks about having those 60 FPS, 60 frame rates per second for the cutscenes in the full game. For the inventory locking, there is currently a hidden feature in the game that does permit locking your inventory items, so you don't have to lose them, move them around, or accidentally sell them. They are still trying to figure out the best way to accomplish this. Just keep in mind that they're still trying to balance out how easy and accessible this is versus how convenient it is. So protection versus convenience is going to be a major topic when it comes to this. Another major point was about two legendary weapons that don't work properly in the demo, specifically the Migraine and the Grim Marrow legendary weapons. To be more specific, the reason these don't work is because that second mod on them makes the first one to not work all the time. So as a result, they're going to rework these legendaries so that the second mod will be changed to make the first one work all the time, and this is going to happen in the full launch of the game. The next one is going to be about the limited stash slots. So in the full game, I think we're going to have about 100 slots right here. We also saw that in one of the previous trailers and gameplay videos. And there's not going to be any auto scrap feature, by the way, to automatically deconstruct all of the items. they want players to not automate this too much and kind of pick and choose which items they want to scrap, but they are willing to decide this with the community and what the best decision is going to be in the future if it happens to be a problem in the future. And yeah, this pretty much covers like most of the important things that were discussed during that Q&A. Of course, the game is still going to be launched in April 1st, so the developers feel solid about that launch date. So April 1st is when the game launches. Of course, I'm gonna keep you guys updated if anything changes in the meantime. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.